To get to set up and everything else we do, you always go to yourscoresheet.com. In this case, we log in. I'll use my login. Your next step is to go to the admin page once you land on the home page. And first thing you want to do is put in your school. There's the new school button. I have a high school in this model. This is a built model with all 9 programs and scores, etc., so we can demonstrate. You might have 2 middle schools, maybe even an elementary school. Just keep adding a new school, click on new school, put the name of the school in, save. Very simple. Now your next procedure is to click on the program button. Here you can see I've checked band, choir, orchestra, jazz band, and color guard. Those are the 9 basic programs that we have built into the system. The MB percussion program is the drum line, basically. There's a lot of different sheets that go with that. Different teacher, different considerations. If you have a dance squad, that certainly works. Guitar, many of might have guitar classes, might want to use it. And there is some mariachi band activity in the southwest of the United States as well. So programs is the next thing that you check or uncheck. What this means is that you will only see sheets and information relative to these programs. I might make a point that the percussion section is within the band, and the MB percussion is the marching band. So there's different sheets for percussionists in your wind ensemble versus your winds. In the area of choir, it covers all types of choir: jazz, choir, show swing choir, any of the choir activities that go on. Orchestra, you have piano and harp included in that. Color guard is kind of one area, but it does have some sub-sheets, tryouts and things like that for specific equipment, rifle, flag, what have you. All right, dance is kind of a movement thing, and mariachi has quite a variation. If you know the instrumentation of mariachi bands, includes sheets for all of those. So we check this and we go on to the next step. Okay, the next thing is pretty easy. You got to put in your directors. Just get them entered in. We'll link them to their ensembles later. As you see in my model, I have quite a few directors here. You'll have all your people listed here. If you're an admin person, you will see everyone in your entire cluster, your entire system, middle school, high school, all levels. If you're a user, you won't be in here anyway, so it's an admin thing. But this gives the administration people, whoever it is that does this, kind of access to information. Click on New Director, put in your director's name, put in their email. If they are an admin person, just simply check yes, and then they'll have access to all the internal guts of this thing. If not, you just default to no and then save. So now the third component, that is the point scale. What in the world is that? All right. 2 types of way of scoring in the system. Remember, we use points. A digit, dot, 3 numbers. Okay, so you can get some distinction between all those kids. So that all those A's you give out in the orchestra right now don't just blend into like nothing. You actually will see some distinction that you know is there as a director. You can talk about your kids. You know very minute differences between these kids. Now we can put numbers on that so other people understand it, like the kids and the parents and the administrators, if they so care to see that. So, the point scale. There's 2 approaches in the system. One is if you have a program such that kids tend to be in groups based on their year in school, which is possible, I guess. Or if you have groups that tend to if your juniors tend to be similar in level, you know what I'm saying, your seniors, if you have one band, one choir, you know, one choir would be a little rare, but not that rare. If you had that, you might want to grade within by grade level so that you know what your freshman level kids can sing over time. You know what that is. Put a number on it. Call it 9 for 9th grade. 9.000 is the beginning of 9th grade. 9.2, by the way, using that, you can equate to being a second month sophomore, if you can distinguish that. But 9.5, you know, by the middle of your freshman year. You should be able to do certain things based on your curriculum, based on what you're teaching people to do, right? And so those months can be broken down that way. And then if a kid's in his 5th month or at the semester break of a freshman year and he can't do certain things you've got set up as targets, then he should be scoring, or she should be scoring, a 9.5, and he or she comes in and scores an 8.7, they're back at 8th grade level here. They're slipping. You see, that's what the grade system's about for point scale. And that's the way this one is set up. Put 9, 10, 11, 12. The lowest number for the high school is a 9. 9th grade, the highest is a 12. The middle school, 4 to 8. So that's one way of thinking. Now, let's say you don't have that situation. You've got a bunch of kids. You've got super talented sophomores, and they audition to get into that top wind ensemble or that top choir, and they're very capable. This is a little bit more normal with multiple ensembles, right? If you got 4 bands, 4 or 5 choirs, you might, 3 orchestras, you might want to consider the ensemble level, unless your scheduling system at your school locks kids in by what grade they are. And to a degree they do. Depends on the system. So you might want to choose an ensemble level approach. You would check here under ensemble scheme. And, 4, 5, they could go like beginner or level. I mean, you might have 4 ensembles that might be a 9, 8, 7, and a 6. In other words, to get into the top wind ensemble or the top choir, you must score a 9.0. That's the standard. And then when you start assessing, you should maintain that 9.0 or greater to maintain an A level. And if you're not, you're scoring an 8.5 or an 8.0 or something, you're behind the standard of the group that you auditioned for and got into, right? Same principle. You divide one number into the other, and you find your grade. Okay, just to connect this whole point scale thing for you once, let's take a look at an ensemble scale selection where the top wind ensemble in this particular example is a 7, requires a 7.0 or greater to get into that ensemble. So here we have a score sheet of an etude test for someone named Olivia, and etude 1, etc. And here you'll see the scores hovering just above and below that 7 margin, right? And what I'd like to show you here, you'll learn about this when you get into the score sheet itself, is that when you listen to the performer, the most important thing to do is to first gather your thoughts and have an impression score. Not a range, but get a feeling for that. When you listen to this kid, what is she? Is she a 6.5? You'll learn to attach numbers to impressions. Now, you want to use the impression range methodology that is described in other areas of the Score Sheet Academy. But notice the black box here. This is the first number you put in. You say, I think she's an 8. Then you go through and you put in these breakdowns for tone quality, technique development, accuracy, and musicality. These are 3 categories in a customized sheet that was designed by a school. And as you put these numbers in, they add up in this box, right? And so what this person discovered was that their impression score was a tad bit higher. When they broke it down into the categories, they realized they were overreacting a little bit to tone quality and musicality more likely than they were technical development and accuracy. All right, realize these are short etudes. So that kind of a point difference I would have rectified in my mind one way or the other. This particular school chose to keep it in the same spot and leave that number there. They may be overreacting to this particular person, this flute player, who may have been first chair in the past, right? Those things all enter our little brains when we're doing this stuff. So it's really a spot check. It's going back to your initial impression score that's so very important. So let's take a look at what that looks like in the classroom. Well, on the classroom side, we go down and find Olivia down here. And there's that score we were talking about, 7.080. And so that's the score that is divided then into the 7, which is the standard for the wind ensemble at this school, a 7 level. And so she achieves 100%. She's staying on course. It took a 7 to get into the ensemble. She's maintaining. Notice above her, another person who had a 5.2 is in the wind ensemble. Honestly, they must have had a rough summer. And maybe there were other factors in play. But that 5.2 then is divided by 7, which is the standard, and this is what gives them that grade. And of course, when you click on these things, you can jump right to his score sheet instantly. So that's what the point scale thing's about on the ensemble side. So now we go to a grade scheme, not an ensemble scheme like we just saw. We're going to focus in on a student named Kip Blumson right here. Kip, he's a 4.473. This school, this high school, has set up the 4 years of high school as a standard so that 1 is a freshman, 2 is a sophomore, 3 is a junior, and 4 is a senior. So you see where Kip's at. And so how do we know this viola section here that Kip, what grade he is? Well, the system knows that when you put in the kids. Let's take a look at that. The way you find a student to check the student record, you simply go into the student view here and you type in Kip's name, Blumson, and he pops up right there. There's Kip. We look him up. And if we go to the edit screen, we'll see that, in fact, Kip Blumson is a 12th grader, okay, a senior. And that's why your database, you put the year in school in there, and then the system will calculate the grade against that. That's the important part of that element, which we talked about earlier. So we see that Kip got a 4.473. So now we will check the classroom. So we jump back to the home page and click on Classroom. Back. So we jump back to the classroom page. And so to look at the classroom for this particular ensemble, we go back to the home page, click on Classroom, our senior orchestra. We're looking at auditions, and we display the data. You see that there's Clip, or is in there? Flip. These names are made up, you know. We use them as models. Yeah, Kip Blumson. It's not a real kid. Anyway. You see here the 4.473 against a 4.0 scale gives that senior a 100% for a grade for that particular etude. So there's two sides to the house here, right? You've got all this data, these 4.00, these 4 digits numbers. This is what gives you distinction between kids, very finite distinction, and is able to drive data to track progress, depending on what number you call certain grades, if you're a grade system, or what number you require to get into a certain ensemble if you use an ensemble system. But in the end, when you export the grades for this particular exam, what comes out is a percentage grade already calculated. In this case, we got some awesome seniors, it looks like, in the viola section. And then if you can upload a CSV file directly to your grading system to be automatic. Otherwise, you've got a spreadsheet that you can simply go to your grading input at your school and put in those grades already calculated. Well, let's talk about ensembles and audition groups. What's the difference and how are they used in the system? Well, audition group essentially is a big bucket of all your similar players, like all winds, all voices, right? All percussion. And they get put into a large group of people unassigned to any ensemble. This is when you do auditions to make certain groups, bands, orchestras, what have you. And so in the case of a band program, let's say you have 4 bands, you have these 4 ensembles then that are the result of auditioning all the kids and then ranking them within their section and then placing them in the various bands. This is one thing that the system does automatically as you score. You'll see when you get into the next part. It makes it much easier. You can modify it, adjust it, tweak it, the whole 9 yards, but at least it's all right there, right? And so at the end of a period, when it's time to audition for the following year, let's say in the spring, you might have auditions before guidance department sets their classes. If you're lucky, you've got time to re-audition those people, and it can make it a lot easier. Or it might be that you do it more frequently, but most time it's going into the next school year. So you've got these 4 ensembles in place. Well, you got to bring that bucket back, and you got to put your freshmen in that group to re-audition for next year, and your sophomores as well as your juniors. And then, of course, your seniors graduate. They're out the door. They're not part of this new bucket. Score sheet that makes it very simple to just move kids from the ensembles into where they belong for the following term. So you set a new term. So your new group then, of course, includes your 8th graders. You bring them over so they can also audition, or you perhaps go to the middle schools, audition those kids, or perhaps it's automatic and they're all in the first band, but not always the case, right? They're not all in the freshman band per se. It depends on your setup. But Scoresheet has all the flexibility to deal with that, and then you're all set for the following year as this cycle returns all over once again. You dump all the string players into the audition group, and then you audition them on those specific instruments, and then they get distributed to the ensembles. That's the way it works in our real life. This just lets you do it a little quicker, and once you get this set up anyway. And so we've used the analogy of the bucket and the 4 glasses in the last video, just to kind of give you an idea of how Scoresheet thinks and is organized, okay? This particular sheet shows a list of the built-in audition groups we've already formed in the system, and they should fit most all of your situations. You'll notice there's some directors' names in there. Those are just our model. Yours will be blank. The display order number is how we keep them in the order we like them to see: band, choir, orchestra. But they can be in any order, and you can change those. The short name basically is the code name for that audition. BD for band, PE for percussion ensemble is pretty understandable. Those you probably ought to just leave because they're really for internal work, and there's no reason to change them unless you're like totally bothered by it, I guess. But if you'd like to go in and make some modifications of our built-in audition groups, you simply go into audition groups under the admin module, and you click add it over here, and here's where you can make adjustments. We encourage you to keep the program order intact, but you can change it depending what the focus of your program is. If there's a whole other audition group that you don't see in the system, you simply click add an audition up at the top. You built in the various school program, audition name, whatever it is, a short name that you would create. And then the director, of course, assigned to the display order is put it in wherever you'd like to see it in the order of list of auditions. And then if there's a special target number, put that in. The result then will be your long list of audition groups right here. And, of course, you can sort it by program where you only see the ones within the program that you might teach. Keep in mind how many of these audition groups you see hinges on what programs you have. So when you do set your programs, and let's say you just check band and choir, you won't see all the other ones that are built into the system, but they're still there in case you expand to that orchestra program someday. So now if we flip screens and take a look at ensembles, it looks like a similar list. What we did is we distinguished it a little bit for our way of thinking by capitalizing the names of the groups. In the case of band, we have a very large group here. I think there's like 800 kids in this music program. It's just there's 4 bands. I call them freshman, sophomore, junior, senior band. Doesn't mean they're necessarily tied to a class, but it made it work for us. Notice here's Jessica Riley, who is the band director. And she's listed over here as the main person for auditions. Well, with 4 bands, there's likely going to be more than one band director. You put whoever you want as the director over the bucket of auditions. It's no big deal. It doesn't affect anything. It just put the lead director there, or whoever might get designated, just puts a name on it. But all directors will pull from the same audition bucket to create their ensembles, right? That's not just for Jessica. She just happens to be listed, again, on the audition side. Very quickly, the max number in the case of an ensemble here is how many students you expect to see in there when it is full. This is often dictated by instrumentation, balance, blend, those types of things. If you're fortunate to be selective in that regard, you may have a second group or a third group. Maybe it's a little larger. A developmental group will certainly be different, but your top wind ensemble, let's say, your top orchestra, your top mixed choir, you'll have some ideal numbers there. I'd put that number in there. You'll see how it's used later. A target number is something different. A target number has to do with the standard for a score. In this case, if you are judging all your kids by what grade in school they're in, you don't need to fill anything in for a target number. It defaults to their year in school. But if you have ensemble groupings where you have a mixture of all classes in all the various groups, then you want to set a target number based on a standard for that group. And to get into your top choir, maybe a 7. To get into the second group, maybe a 6, right? Or the top wind ensemble, top orchestra. So you either use a grade-based system, or you use an ensemble-based system where you put a number that's in the system that is the barrier to get into that system. And then going forward, that is determined to be an A, anything at that point level or higher. If you have a 7.0 and they get a 7.25, they're in the A range. And then it's calculated anything that falls short. That's how the grading process works. Those are two different things. Max has to do with the number of students you'd like to see in there as a balanced ensemble, and target number is grade related, which you never fill out if you're grading by year in school. And if you take a look then at the audition list, remember these lists look very similar to that. These are the buckets, right? All the buckets of the various voices. A max number is going to be the number of kids that you have auditioning, and that will be calculated. There's no really need to fill that out because the system calculates that based on what kids you put into the bucket. The target number at this point would never be used if you're just trying to audition all the kids and put them in ensemble. There is an opportunity or a time when you might want to use the audition bucket, the audition groups, to do special auditions for things like, maybe you're a madrigal group, to get into that, to be in the pit orchestra, a brass ensemble that's going on tour, that kind of thing. And so it also might be used as a pre-audition to see who might qualify to audition for your district, your region, or state kind of type of thing, depending on what you have in your state. So there are certain subgroups, right, within our programs where we want kids audition to get into them, right? And you're not placing them as a result into an ensemble that is graded. So you just use this as a tool to audition those special situations. And in that case, you throw a target number into the system, call it whatever you want, 10, 8, and then that is the number that separates people who would be qualified based on your criteria to perform the literature that is very selective in that particular case with the skills the kids need. All right?